Pat McDonald, there is no nostalgia like nostalgia, and we are continuing our journey of looking at movies from the big fours.
Yes.
We're looking at 1974, which is 50 years ago. I can't even
50
believe it.
years. It's crazy.
50. It is
I was with
crazy.
I was with two high school buddies this last weekend, and I realized I met them 50 years ago because I met them as a freshman in high school. I was a freshman 50 years ago.
Wow.
I mean, Jesus, I am grandpa now. Forget it.
Well, I've got a kid who's about to become a freshman in high school, so the
Oh my
circle
God.
continues anew. Yeah.
There you go. And
Now I got to
there it
ask you,
is.
Pat,
Yo,
as a freshman, I would imagine that if you had somehow managed to see this movie, you would have had to have been driven to it or snuck out or something. But did you see John Waters' not Pink Flamingos? That was 72. Did you see Female Trouble? That's what we're talking about today. Female Trouble. I can't get Pink
not
Flamingos out of my head, but
not
did
back
you
in the
see that?
day. And had
No?
somebody driven me to this movie and I would have watched it, I probably would have had to go to a psychiatrist. Only because I know in my 14-year-old, hell, I went to Young Frankenstein, didn't know the term knockers. So you can imagine seeing a dick on screen, excuse my language. But I think it still has an NC-17 because showing the male anatomy.
You can show the male anatomy in an R-rated film. It just cannot be standing at attention.
Right.
So,
Well, none of them were. Well, maybe the one shot. I don't know. We can get
well,
into
it
that.
might have just been so small that you couldn't tell the difference.
Exactly.
But oh, okay. This movie. Now, Pat, I was mistaken when I suggest we talk about this. I thought I had never seen Female Trouble. It turns out
Ah,
I had.
wow. I'd never
I
seen it.
Well, I had watched it 7 years ago. This is the casualties of getting old because I'm like, have I seen this movie? I was 20 minutes in before I realized, yes, I had seen it. So there
Uh,
was that. And then I realized why I'd seen it. I actually interviewed Mink Stole, who plays
oh,
Taffy Davenport in the movie back in 2017 for a reissue of Serial Mom
mm,
from 1994, the other John Waters movie that she was in, or one of many.
yes.
So yeah, it was weird to revisit this movie and have, I think, a different reaction to it watching it now than I did
Ah,
even like 7 years ago. So
sure.
right off the bat, this is your first time. Let me ask, are you a John Waters fan
I
generally, or
am. I
yeah?
am. Yes, I do believe he is one of those pioneers in a sense, for queer cinema, for the Pope of Trash. He's the Pope of Trash. And really, he was doing so many radical things that later became standard kind of shockers in a movie. He was doing it in 72 and 74. You know, I mean, people. It was an interesting time, and we can almost put him in the pantheon of the directors that emerged during that era because he definitely put a mark on cinema that has maintained throughout the years.
Yeah, and it's interesting. He's still, I mean, he's a character. If you've seen him on talk shows or just listen to commentaries, I mean, he's a wild guy who has this kind
Yeah,
of buttoned up. He almost looks like Alfred from Batman or something like that, right?
yeah. He had
Um,
a little thin mustache, the Clark Gable mustache, and I got one question with him when he appeared at Chicago Humanities Festival, and I will send you the soundbite for that. I meant to
please
do it
do.
this morning, but I forgot. But yeah, I asked him about his first film, which I guess is Lost, his first short film from 1964. So he said there was no budget on it. That's the essence of the answer. So
Well, it is. It's hard to imagine that there's much of a budget on Female Trouble. It's one of those films where I feel like it either had no budget and they built everything with what they could find and calling in favors, which I think is the case,
Mhm.
or they had a lot of money and they invested it in making perfect looking trash. I mean, it's a wild movie to behold.
I would say the former rather than the latter.
Yeah,
You know
right.
what? One of the things I find interesting, and I thought about this, is the business of model that he had. I'm sure it was all self-financed, so any monies made in the box office, I think, reverted back to old JW. you know, because
I
nobody was. I don't know.
I wonder how much money he actually made off of these things at the time. I mean, they're cult hits now, but
Right? Yeah, it'd be
um,
interesting because distributors picked them up after they got midnight runs. You know, people were selling out these midnight runs of Pink Flamingo, and of course, Female Trouble when it came along. So it was intriguing. That was a question I'm asking, which tells you where I'm at right now. Okay.
all right. So, what is this movie about, Pat? Can you synopsize Female Trouble for me? I'm going to put this on your shoulders for a change.
All right. Well, I would say it's the story of is it Dawn?
Hmm.
I'm sorry, Dawn Davenport, right?
Yeah.
Played by the great female impersonator Divine, who by the way is a bisexual. I just read that in his
Hmm.
descriptive. So, hey, not that it matters, but again, it's all about the gender fluidity in this movie. He has a bunch. She has a bunch of wacky friends who just kind of are the same as her, just kind of weird gender fluid people, and their adventures, essentially her adventures. He segments it into her high school years, her working years, her first years in the crime. She started a little criminal element, her marriage, and then modern day 1974. So it's basically compartmentalized into those four things, and we see the result. I never had a trial scene on my John Waters bingo card, but yes, there is a trial at the end where the great Dawn Davenport goes on trial for the crimes that she commits. And they get pretty heinous toward the end, including shooting up a audience of onlookers. So
Well,
that's it in a nutshell. What do you think? Anything you want to add?
oh, plenty, Pat. Two things. One, going back to Serial Mom, that there's
Yeah.
a trial scene at the end of that, so you want to
Okay.
check that
Very
out.
good. I haven't
Um,
seen that.
it's really worthwhile. It's
Mhm.
Kathleen Turner is the lead role,
Who I
and
love.
yeah. Hmm. Um, but the other thing is the way that you described Female Trouble. You know, Dawn Davenport has some gender fluid friends, and they go on a series of adventures, and her life is segmented into high school and marriage and a life of crime. That's the most PG-13 leave everything out description that I could
I mean,
possibly imagine.
there's some rough elements in it. I mean, yes, you see both male and female genitalia, you see nudity, you see violence, but again, it's their adventures, and that's just part of it.
Right, but I mean, you describe Pippi Longstocking as having adventures with the kids in the neighborhood. This is a rotten criminal teenager who has no compunction about beating people up, telling everybody off, engaging in like crazy rough sex with strangers, and
I mean
beating her daughter to death. I mean, like,
oh yeah, that was one of the funniest scenes in the movie when she strangled her to death, because they did the whole thing where you shake neck and their head goes back and forth. Hilarious. I hilarious on The Simpsons. Hilarious here.
the
Especially by that time she'd converted to a Hare Krishna. I
yeah,
told you it's adventures. That's not a spoiler. It's just their adventures.
well, we'll go full spoilers anyway, because
All right.
the
Yeah,
movie's
why not? It's 50
here's
years old.
I was going to say it's half a century old. I can't
Half a
believe that.
century. You know what? Casablanca was made in 1943, so its 50th anniversary was 93. So put that in perspective.
I don't want to.
I don't want to either. I don't want to either. I don't want to.
So here's the thing.
Yeah.
I don't think I reviewed Female Trouble when I watched it, because I just watched it as interview prep, and this was 7 years ago.
Yep.
So I think I watched Pink Flamingos and Serial Mom and then this movie. So it all kind of runs together in a John Waters pastiche.
Sure.
I think I used to be, because my first experience with him was watching Hairspray. That came out when I was 10,
Yeah.
and my parents rented it and they loved it. Avoid the remake at all costs.
I
John
have to
Travolta is no divine.
no, and I have to say that may be my first experience with Waters as well, but maybe I caught one of his earlier indie films in the 80s or 90s. But I have not seen Pink Flamingo, and that's the entree, if you will, right?
Right. So wait, you still haven't seen Pink Flamingos?
I have not, and I
Oh,
know that's the big one. So
yeah. We'll have
the
to,
early stuff I have not like. This is the earliest John Waters film now that I've seen with this one.
well, Pink Flamingos, that's another one, and maybe when that has another anniversary coming up, we can catch up on it, because that's one I want to revisit, because like my reaction to Female Trouble this time was, I don't remember feeling this way the first time I watched it, because I'm a John Waters fan, but I have a feeling that as I get older, my tolerance for John Waters is sort of going down. And I think honestly, a lot of that is because I'm watching Female Trouble and I'm seeing how this movie was so prescient. And half a century later, what was this kind of fringy oddball freak show, this I dare you to watch this entertainment,
Right.
is now everywhere in the culture. I
Yep.
mean,
Yep.
it's about
Yep.
drag culture, it's about,
Yep.
sexual fluidity, it's about the destruction and a reviling of family and institutions. It's about celebrating grotesqueries as beauty and saying, "Hey,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
beautiful just the way you are. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter." And the delusion of, I'm 600 pounds and I'm wearing a horrible wig and this awful pancake makeup over an acid burn, but I'm still fabulous and no one will tell me different, until, and this is the final nail in the coffin, the institutions that supported this delusion, once there's a little bit of heat, i.e., Dawn Davenport is putting on a show that everybody is celebrating, but she ends up shooting up her own audience, and the cops break in and start shooting people, and then it's a big news story. Everybody kind of gets caught. There's a trial, as you mentioned, and the people who were backing this delusion all of a sudden back away and say, "Oh, we didn't actually
Right.
enable this." You see that all the time now with giant corporations. Not to get too political, but everybody's into BLM. We're going to put it on our banking website, until
Right.
they start burning down cities, and all of a sudden
Well, I
it's like,
mean,
wait a second, what?
that's a speculative comment, but okay.
Speculative.
Yes.
Okay,
I
I'll throw in
mean,
Antifa, but they were bed
riots
fellows.
are the last voice of the oppressed. You know.
That could have been true
You
at one
know.
point,
I
but
mean, and there were a lot of bad actors in that situation. But okay, let's not go there. The Who wants to be famous? Who wants to die for their art? And the guy volunteers, and that's how she starts shooting it up. And I love that. I will. Boom.
you see, Pat, I'm horrified by that scene. Like, I'm watching, I'm like, this is not. I didn't think anything in Pink Flamingos was funny. This not again. I keep confusing it. Female Trouble. I think this movie should have been called Pink Flamingos 2, but Female Trouble, I didn't find anything funny in it. I think because, and maybe I did the first time, and maybe it's because I'd seen it already. So I'm like, okay, I've been through all this, and now I got to watch it again. But it's just
Right.
disturbing because there is no, up until the very end, there's not even an indication that John Waters has a problem with what his main character is doing. It's kind of like watching Scarface. And you've got, Brian De Palma building up Tony Montana as this drug mogul, and everything's great. He's got the women, he's got the money. And then at the end, he gets, gunned down, and that's the lesson. But you could cut off the last 30 seconds of Scarface, and it's like, oh, this is great. Look,
alert.
he went out shooting. That's great. Yeah. Spoiler for another movie that's way old. Yeah.
Well, I love your comparison to it being this is a futuristic or a prescient movie to the future. I mean, that's exactly it. Our whole society is living in female trouble right now. And, anything goes. Maybe because we're in the urban center, but I see it indicated all around the U.S. and the world. So, yeah, oh, I have to read you Rex Reed's review at the time, which
I can't wait.
which they plastered on all their promotion, by the way. If I could do a, where do these people come from? Where do they go when the sun goes down? Isn't there a law or something?
Was he saying that about John Waters or the characters in this movie?
He was saying that about the movie,
Okay.
Or and deeper, I think, as to, what does he call them? The Dreamlanders, after his Dreamland productions.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is, like, I remember growing up and I would hear about these kind of transgressive, countercultural movies, and some of them I would seek out, or they just kind of find me. And I was like, wow, this is really cool, because I felt like it was an alternative.
Right.
Looking at this now, I'm like, I could just turn on the news or TikTok and see exactly this. So I don't find it funny anymore. I find it kind of sad, but partially because I feel like there need to be some controls on this. Like, there are a few people who get to be rebels. If every journalist in America is Hunter S. Thompson, then journalism doesn't mean anything, right?
Well, it would be better if it was, but that's another. But I where I lost my, after doing that comment, I lost my train of thought. So, but I know what I wanted to say. I'm old enough to know when Rocky Horror Picture Show was outside the mainstream, and that became the mainstream, which was really weird to me. And also, all through college, they played polyester and female trouble, but I wasn't hip enough to say, "Ooh, I'm going to seek that out," because those were the midnight movies, and the underground film societies were playing them. But I unfortunately, I wasn't, again, hip enough to go after something like that. Again, I think I would have been traumatized at the time. But now I was just laughing the whole entire picture. I thought it was hilarious. I loved it. I was like, man, I'm glad I watched this now instead of then, and not been traumatized. And now I'm just a cynical F who finds the whole thing hilarious.
Do you think there is a degree of cynicism required to find something like this funny?
Yeah, oh, definitely. Well, you have to understand that life is absurd. All of life is absurd, and yeah, we're more overt about it now, but this always existed. He's proved it always existed. It existed in the 70s. It existed in the 50s. It existed in the 30s. It existed in 1900. It's there. I'll tell you what. Babylon, the movie that just recently came out. I can't think of the guy's name.
There's Damien Chazelle, right?
Yes, Chazelle.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Babylon. In Babylon, there's the a-hole of Los Angeles, right? Which I think is one of the great metaphors for every city. I'm obsessed with what the a-hole of Chicago is right now. But that's the point. The a-hole is where you find those creatures that populated films like Female Trouble. So it's always been there. Just been.
Well, it's interesting. Well, it's interesting because when you say the a-hole of Chicago or whatever, I think, and I have not seen Babylon. That was on my, yeah.
I'd love to discuss that if you ever want to do that one, because I think that's a very intriguing film. Go ahead.
Well, it's weird because this movie has come up. I think this is the third time in about 2 weeks that's come up in conversation. I'm like, someone's telling me to watch Babylon. Yeah. We'll have to talk about it.
I think it's on Prime.
Okay. Well, the thing is, like, when you say the a-hole of whatever, I don't think of that as a positive thing. Like you're saying,
it's not
find the place. Well, it's just like you're saying. If I understand, you're saying, where's the a-hole of Chicago? Where do you go to find the freaks, the people who would kind of
not the freaks.
Take up this movie?
Yeah, the lowest. What's an asshole but a place where shit resides? So this would be where the characters of the city. It could be a gangbanger house. Why am I saying that? That's so stereotypical. It could be something that we don't know about, but is so degraded and so anti-society that to even walk among these folks would just give you a trauma. This is what Female Trouble celebrates.
Well, but here's the
The
thing. So, I
asshole
mean,
of Baltimore. Okay.
right. Well, I mean, when I'm glad you explained that, because when I think of like, where's the asshole of the city, I'm thinking of like the heights of power, like the jerks
Man,
who are kind of controlling things. So
that's a different category of assholery, but I agree.
yes. Okay. So, but we've got our context straight. But I mean, I
Right.
guess that's my question is like watching this movie, I it's interesting that you say that, because
Right.
I don't know that John Waters is trying to insinuate that these people actually exist. It
Mm.
feels like this is a send up of like, what is the most offensive thing that you could do to throw in the face of like a conservative culture? Not to suggest that there really are these gigantic drag queens out there eating, human or dog feces. Spoiler for the end of Pink Flamingos. Um,
Jesus.
Right. Oh, that's the most iconic
Rosebud
thing about
was
that
his
film.
sled. Rosebud was his sled.
Pat,
Another
Pat,
spoiler.
I gotta ask you, how are you a film critic? You've been around for as long as you have. You know
Yes.
about Pink Flamingos, that it exists, and you don't know that the most notorious thing about it is that Divine eats poop at the end.
No, no, I knew that. I
Oh,
knew that.
okay, okay.
I've just not seen the movie, and I'm just saying we're doing all spoilers. So let's say Rosebud was his sled.
Made out of poop that Divine ate. No, but
Casablanca. Rick doesn't end up with Ilsa.
no, I have seen that one.
All right.
Um, no, so I guess that's my question is like, is this the people that he casts his films with, or at least back in the day when he was still, kind of coming up, they
Yep.
do feel like these aren't Hollywood types. They feel like real people that he pulled out of maybe his neighborhood, or maybe there was casting. It was like, yeah, you could be in my show, but they all look like our crumb drawings.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
the most contemporarily beautiful ones. There's still something kind of, or say, traditionally beautiful ones. There's still something kind of off about them, right?
Well,
Um, but I guess my question is he meaning this as a satire or a reflection or kind of both? I don't know where the line is.
well, I think that he was in the underground, and he was in the underground in the '60s. The queer culture was underground in the '60s and early '70s, and that's where he found all his denizens and dreamlanders, and who came up. Let's make a film, kids, and he just kept making them until he got to the status he got to. But so the extremities in it are, I think, is simply the extreme things he saw in that underground, or the asshole of Baltimore, however you want to say it. It's just that those when people are outside the sphere of society, they're totally free to say what they want, to do what they want. I mean, God, this thing was inspired by Tex Watson, the guy who was on the Charlie Manson crew that he got to be friends with. I mean, there's a wooden toy train, I believe, in the credits that was made by Tex Watson, and that's where he got the idea for the beautifulness of crime, whatever the theme would be, the beauty of crime, and how it affects these characters. So, I mean, it's
Right.
weird, man.
It is, but I again, I'm not sure. It's not until the very end where I thought, well, maybe there is some kind of a moral compass here, because you call it the beauty of crime, and there's a lot of things that are horrifying in this movie that are described as beautiful and necessary and funny.
Right.
Multiple beatings and rape and murder and all this stuff. I mean, there's a sexual assault that is a couple of them that are played for laughs in this movie. Like, hey, while the guy is, uh, doing things to our, I think she was out of high school at this point, but I couldn't remember
Yeah,
the
she was
the scene.
14.
Okay, Divine playing a 14-year-old, and then she gets
No, no. Oh, yeah. No, you're referring to the
oh
earlier
well,
scene
because it
where
happens
he's
to both
playing
mom,
both characters,
right, but he's playing both mom
the
and
raper and the
dad,
rapist. Right.
right, and the same thing happens to both mom and dad at the hands of the same person, or mom and daughter, sorry, at the hands of the
Yeah.
same person over the course of 20 years.
Oh,
But
that's really
the
the
cutaway,
incest was not good.
that's where you draw the line, Pat. That,
Yes.
but I'm saying that first scene in the woods where she's running away from him and he attacks her,
Yeah.
and it's going on, and she's like, oh no, but then she's like getting into it. And
Right.
then to punctuate the hilarity of this scene, they cut to a shot from behind and you realize the attacker he's wearing tidy whities with a giant shit stain on the back of it. I'm like,
Giant streak.
right. I'm like, I get it. There's some people that are going to find this like I can imagine people like laughing uproariously from start to finish in this movie. I just thought kind of what you're talking about, the freedom and people living completely freely. I think there's a reason that we have constraints is because this is not good. There's no beauty in crime, Pat, at
Well,
all.
who establishes the constraints? Who's watching the Watchmen?
The lawmakers, the body public,
There's no laws
tradition.
anymore.
Well,
We
that's a subject for another time.
we put a man above the law, or a person
Look,
who's ever in that
yes,
office.
but he's in no danger of being reelected. Anyway,
Ah!
no, I'm talking about Joe Biden. Uh,
Oh God.
anyway, I think
Oh, God.
but I guess that's sort of my problem.
Yeah, it's
With
my
this.
problem too. After this weekend, I've been depressed ever since.
Well, that makes two of us.
All right.
But I think, but yeah, I mean, you on some level you need, I would assume, to acknowledge, Pat, that
Yes.
crime. You don't even need to, go through a stack of law books to agree that crime, especially the
not
kinds
pay.
that are being committed in this film, that, yeah, it's in the context of a comedy, ha, but there's nothing really funny about it, right? If you think about what these people are doing to other people, it's kind of horrifying, and it's being celebrated up until the last 5 minutes of the film.
Man, are you a buzzkill?
Look, are you going to sit through Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, and be like, ah!
Well, that's not that's not intentional comedy. This is a comedy. It's extreme. It's absurd. Life is absurd. I mean, he might shoot the gun into the audience, but you see no blood or guts or anything. I mean, it's just like the equivalent of a 1940s Western where they shoot people. Oh, they're just down. There's no.
Right, but those aren't. But westerns, unless you're talking about Blazing Saddles, those aren't meant to be comedies either. I mean, what you're talking about is trying to make a humorous situation out of something that is not at all funny, and I don't think that's why I'm confused about Waters' point of view in this movie. Like, maybe this is why it's on the fringes, because it takes a sick, demented mind to find all this hilarious, Pat. And I used to be one of those people. I am holding a funeral for my own burgeoning or my own dying liberalism.
Because it's just going to get worse, baby. Just going to get worse. You might as well join the sick, because the sick are surviving.
Well, they're not going to if there's nobody who's not sick to take care of them.
A poignant, pungent social economic commentary.
Yes, that's what we do here. There. Yeah, we allegedly talk about movies on this show sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. Let me tell you the MVP of the film for sure is
Divine.
Well, no, I mean she's in the category above everybody else. Let's say of supporting characters, Mink Stole is the MVP. She was frickin' hilarious. I mean, the whole conversion to Hare Krishna just killed me. And then when she came in with the Hare Krishna wear and started doing the finger symbols, forget it. She had me.
Yeah. I wondered because she was singing kind of a song at the end. I wonder if that was an actual thing or if that was just John Waters saying, "Oh, make something up that sounds like you'd hear in an airport."
Like Right.
But yeah, I mean, she was really good in this. To your point, again, I didn't find her funny. I found her like unrelentingly odd, like someone that I'd see in Warhol's factory hanging about. But
exactly.
But I will say, as much as I didn't like the lead character, Dawn Davenport, I think the reason to watch this movie is to just appreciate Divine as a presence. I was completely repulsed by her from beginning to end. But when you see Divine change personas, because he plays a couple of different roles here. And if you're not careful, I don't think that it's obvious where the switch is.
No, it is not.
He gets out of the drag and you're like, oh, he's the bald guy and everything, but that's the same person as is playing, this drag queen at the beginning.
I had to go back and see because I read it afterward because I was like, where did he appear as Earl? And then I went back. But
Yeah.
I love the line, uh, Aunt Ida, Edith Massey, one of the great movie characters of all time. She ends up with a hook as a hand. Uh, she goes, heterosexuality is a sick and boring life. She calls
Yeah.
her a filthy hetero when she's in the cage. Filthy hetero.
Yeah, it's heartwarming stuff. You know, it's really interesting, Pat, is talking about influences. Now, I don't know if this is true, but uh, there is a real life person who appears to have been heavily influenced by Aunt Ida, and I couldn't put my finger on it until
Oh,
like late in the film. I know you don't watch much reality television
right.
because you have taste, despite what I might think of your opinion of female trouble. Um, but there's a TV show called 90 Day Fiance. Have you heard of this?
Yes, I have.
There's a
I've never
character.
seen it.
Oh, you are missing out. They have a whole television universe of different shows that all connect back into the root.
Okay.
It's like the Avengers of trash. But there's a character, I'll call her a character because I still can't believe any of these people are real, named Debbie. And she looks and talks and dresses. She has better teeth, just like Aunt Ida. I'll have to send you a picture or maybe a clip if I
Please
can
do.
find it, but
Or
it is unreal.
Insert it in here too so people can see. Maybe a side by side. You know?
I'll see. Yeah, I'll see what I can do. I think
Okay.
I might have time to do that. Well, no,
Ooh,
what I'll do is I'll probably put a link if I can find a clip down
There
below
you
because I
go.
don't want to get a copyright strike from TLC of all places. I think it's TLC. It's one of those ironically named channels. Like it used to be the Learning Channel. We're going to learn about science, and now we're going to learn about reality
Extreme.
couples.
The a-hole of Baltimore. I like the Dashers too. David Lockery is his name. Now, he was a kind of an original Dreamlander, and then got into drug trouble for the next film. Apparently, I was reading. So yeah, that's wild, huh?
From what I'd read, he was on, I think it was PCP or something
Right.
during this
Right.
movie, and then he
Oh,
died shortly before it came out because he was supposed to be in Waters' next movie.
right.
So it was very tragic. I mean, yeah, um, they were great. This kind of
The Dashers.
the Dashers, they're like this wannabe high society couple that loved fame and they want to make people famous, and they would stop at absolutely nothing until, as I mentioned before, when the publicity of the heat came down on them,
Right.
they show up in court and they're like, oh, we would never, and we never encouraged this, and she did all this of our own volition, and she's such a terrible person, and we are the moral actors here.
Well,
That's
also, I think he was just making fun of the Warhols of the world, the ones that sit on the sideline and attract all these, freaky people, but and almost exploit them for money. But and you can argue that he's one of them too. But I think that was a commentary on that level of art, if you will.
I could see that as an archetype, but if he's making a direct accusation against Warhol, I don't think it's fair because Warhol was an
Well, he
artist.
was as freaky as his people around him. So yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, not even just in terms of freaking, but in terms of like output and what he meant to culture and art. I think is undeniable.
I'm a big Andy fan. I'm just
me too.
making an observation there.
Mhm.
I loved the scene where first the whole show is fabulous. The trampoline part, Divine Dawn Davenport has a coming out where she does a show called Superstar, and she goes in. Basically, she just prances around, goes on a trampoline, does a flip. I mean, bizarre. But I love when she goes, I called the heroin hotline on Abby. I bought the gun that Bremer used to shoot Wallace. I had an affair with Juan Corona. I blew Richard Speck.
And she praised to Richard Speck in the green room, I think, right before or after she kills her daughter.
Waters was obsessed with those guys. Yeah.
Wow.
But I blew Richard Speck. I'm putting that on my business card.
I would advise against that.
Okay.
But no,
That's
she
the
also
best
ends up
advice you've
doing
given me.
well. Thank you. It's been long enough. How many years?
Oh, we
But
know each other over 10 easily,
yeah,
if not more.
I think maybe 12 or 13. Something like it's
Two
crazy like
people
that.
don't talk like this to each other unless they know they have a history.
Very true. But no, also on that stage show, she brings out, I don't know if it was a bass or something, but she was doing some fun things with that. And man, it was
I
truly
loved it.
outrageous.
I
But
loved it.
also I can't look at that and not think of America's Got Talent.
Exactly. Wow. Oh, here's another great. Here was a great Aunt Ida line. I don't need some goddamn eggs. I want meat and potatoes.
Yeah, because there's the other thing is because Taffy, again, Dawn Davenport is a despicable human being. I don't know why she kept her daughter around, and I think the only like bit of salvageable commentary that was ironic, maybe not even on purpose, was Taffy was given to like this crazy antisocial behavior. Like at one point, I did find this funny years ago when I first saw it. Didn't laugh as much this time, but Dawn comes home to find her daughter, who I think at this point was only supposed to be 8 or something, in the living room playing Car Crash. She had like she built
recreating
this
a car crash.
and she's like pouring ketchup over the dead bodies in the car after it's been wrecked. But later on, when Taffy is she's older then, and Dawn is having a dinner party. She's having guests over. I think it's the Dashers. She tells Taffy to basically get her act together and be polite and go put something respectable on. I'm like, how ironic that this is, the kind of conservative approach to like be respectable. We're having company over. Don't be acting like such a monster. When I'm sure John Waters and Divine and all these other folks would rail against their parents telling them to do that because like, how put your hair down, stop putting makeup on. What are you doing? That kind of thing.
Well, here's another great line when she finds out Taffy's going to be Hare Krishna. I'll show you consciousness when I knock you unconscious. I can put that on my business card.
I think that's better than the Richard Speck thing.
All right, good.
But no, as far as like trivia, I do want to read something fun because we're
Yes.
swapping quotes and facts, but this is from
Yeah.
Wikipedia, so take it with a grain of salt. But at one point, we do see Dawn giving birth to Taffy, which is
Yes.
it's
Yes.
amazing because they don't do like a fake baby like
Mm-mm.
American Sniper, but they
No.
do like it's a real newborn, and I'm like, how did they didn't even do the thing where like, oh, we've got a 1-year-old, but we kind of wrap them up to make them. No, this was like a newborn. And okay, so it
I
said
think she was 3 days. I think it's a she. She was 3 days out of the hospital when they quick
Right.
get the camera. Let's film it.
Well, she said, let's see, the birth was saved until the end of the shooting when Dreamlander Susan Lowe gave birth to a son and agreed to Waters' request that they film her son as Dawn's baby. The umbilical cord was fashioned out of prophylactics filled with liver.
That's my fave.
While the baby, Ramsey McLean, was doused with fake blood. The scene greatly confused. This is the capper.
Yeah,
Pat.
this is the capper. I saw it. Yeah, go ahead, but give it to them.
The scene greatly confused Lowe's mother-in-law, who was visiting from England to meet her grandchild for the first time.
She walks in on this. Beautiful. And he claims that could be a good Waters story, but yeah.
I want to believe it's true.
Did you read this one? Years after making the film, Waters was contacted by divorce lawyers on behalf of a woman who claimed that their ex-husband, who had been a church official, had received a substantial sum of money for allowing a pornographic film to be filmed in the church. Waters informed them that female Trevor was most definitely not a porno, and he hadn't paid the man a nickel for using the church to film the wedding scene.
Again, like I feel like an Ed Wood style movie about John Waters' career is almost unnecessary because I think the films are crazy enough to speak for themselves. But there are enough of these anecdotes that I think it'd be fun for John Waters to tell the story of his career through a dramatization.
Let's get a Netflix special where they do a deep dive because all these stories are amazing. In fact, Divine's look was based on a Deanna Arbus photo of a young Brooklyn family in 1966. So obviously the era of the Beehive, and also Divine started as a hairdresser, and his specialty, the Beehive.
I can believe it. I got to talk about like at the end because
Yeah.
Aunt Ida throws. We kind of skipped over most of the plot of this movie,
Yeah, well,
and there actually is one. But so Dawn gets involved with this one guy who's a hairdresser at the salon. They start an affair. He
Gator.
pisses her off. Gator. Gator's mom, Ida, gets mad because Dawn kicks Gator out. She
Right.
throws acid on Dawn's face, completely disfiguring her. And then later in the film, Dawn reclaims her stature, her beauty through like injecting, was it liquid nail polish?
Was it Aunt Ida who threw the acid? I watched
Yes.
it. Okay,
Yeah.
very good.
Mm-hmm.
And Aunt Ida is Gator's mother?
Yeah. Or aunt. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I didn't catch that.
I think he was living with her, but yeah, he called her Aunt Ida.
Right.
Yeah. The name's in the clue is in the name. It's Aunt Ida, not mom. So yeah, that's my fault. But no, so towards the end of the film, when Dawn is fully in her entertainer era, she shaves her head into a mohawk. So you've got this giant beehive mohawk. And what I loved is the huge curls on the back that looked almost like brass knuckles. I mean, it's a crazy. These movies are iconic for a reason. I think Divine is an icon for a reason because you can't look away from her. Yeah.
Only in America will we have Divine. I mean, I love it. I love her speech when she finally decided to divorce Gator. She has this speech about taking a bath to get the stink off her 5-year marriage. And the whole thing is just hilarious. It's so extreme. And another thing I love the bad acting in it. There's so much bad acting. The doctor is incredibly bad. I mean, I swear to God, he was reading his lines off cue cards.
Yeah, and you've also got like the proliferation of that weird Pennsylvania or Baltimore accent, I guess.
Yeah.
A lot of E's. I don't know. Yeah.
Using.
Very odd.
It's an odd city. Believe me, I know Baltimore.
But that lends itself to its charm. As much as I dislike this movie, I dislike it for reasons that have nothing to do with the production itself. I admire John Waters. I think it was great that he was able to put this together, and it's really ambitious for a no budget production. I mean, it's almost like theater of the mind. You forget that they're not actually in a courthouse at the end. You've got the jury box is just basically like a pole with some drapes drapes in front of it. Somehow they got something to look like a judge's bench. It's like this is great.
There are 3 different sets apparently in Waters' apartment. It was the Dasher's apartment plus the little office that they had off of the salon. Remember, she had to go back there, and something else I can't remember. But what was the shot of the pig head about? Remember when Taffy and Aunt Ida were having their thing, and he kept going back to a shot of the pig head? Was that just to show Aunt Ida's piggishness?
Maybe. I mean, but you didn't need symbolism to represent that, Pat. Yeah, I don't know. But here's
I like the bow tie defense lawyer at the end too. Her lawyer, Divine's lawyer, or Dawn Davenport's lawyer.
Right, and
he had like a beige boy haircut and a bow tie.
Right, and she's like, "You're my agent, or you're my entertainment manager. Get me out of this." And he's like, "I'm not your manager. I'm your lawyer."
Oh my God, hilarious! The original name of the film, "Rotten Mind, Rotten Face." That was a working title, but he didn't want critics to go "Rotten Mind, Rotten Face, Rotten Movie." That's why he changed it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird that he would be concerned about what critics think, because this seems to be the most like, counterculture thing you could possibly do.
Well, yeah, and I think he was maybe taken aback a bit. But, you know, he was making pink flamingos on the sly, and made it as extreme as possible. And suddenly it gets into the mainstream, and you know they're calling him every name in the book. I can imagine him saying, "Nope, nope, not rotten mind, rotten face. Sorry, I'm not giving them that."
Yeah. Well, that's the other weird thing about like John Waters as a filmmaker, and I've got blind spots in his filmography, especially
Sure,
things
I
he's
got
done in the last
huge blind
two
spots. Yeah,
decades. But it's one of those strange things where he breaks through as this countercultural force, and then he has a huge, you know, I remember just being everywhere, Hairspray in '87, and now he's in the mainstream. And then he's doing Serial Mom with Kathleen Turner, and he's doing movies with like later on with Johnny Knoxville and Tracy Ullman. So he goes from having basically his friends and people that are not actors in
right.
these no budget extravaganzas to, frankly, no pun intended, watered down mainstream movies with stars that don't have quite the same cultural impact.
Well,
But
you know,
but
yeah,
he maintains that it's kind of like going back to Hunter Thompson. Like
right,
once he started being recognized everywhere and he couldn't cover things the same way because the story became about him showing up at a convention rather than
right.
him like covering it.
Well, also, I believe that, you know, like every artist, you evolve. And, you know, I've been there, done that. Now they're giving me $2 million, $3 million to make a picture. Maybe I'm going to do something different. You know, let me ask
Instead
you,
of instead of making 2 million pictures for $1 though.
right? Exactly. Exactly. Let me ask you a question. Did George Lucas get the hand whack of Luke Skywalker idea from Antida getting her hand whacked off by, spoiler alert, Dawn Davenport?
I'm pretty sure other people had hands cut off, but you know, I won't rule it out. I mean, it was
I
3
wouldn't
years
rule it
before
out
Star
either
Wars.
because it was a, you know, when he was coming up, that was a sensational film. Everybody in the filmalati had to go and see Female Trouble or anything that Waters was doing. So I wouldn't put it past him. He likes to
Yeah.
steal things anyways.
What? No. The power of myth. No.
The power of myth. Okay, Joseph
So
Campbell.
mm, hey, Campbell, Warhols, we're coming full
Yeah,
circle.
we really
Um,
are, man.
well, I think that's about a good place to end it. So
well,
yeah, female trouble. Oh,
well,
sorry, you had something else.
I would like to just read this quote from Divine because I love it. And the last thing I wanted to say is all those characters are John Waters, just his extreme sides. It's better than therapy when he makes films like this. But
Fair enough.
here it is. Divine, that's my name. It's the name John Waters gave me. I like it. That's what everyone calls me now, even my close friends. They can call me whatever they want. They can call me fatso. They can call me asshole. I don't care. You always change your name when you're in show business. Divine has stuck as my name. Did you ever look it up in the dictionary? I won't even go into it. It's unbelievable. The late great Divine.
I would wear that as the back of a T-shirt with Divine's mohawk with the
Yeah.
brass knuckles
Yes.
face on the front of it.
Marketing.
Yeah.
Marketing.
I don't like what you're doing with your fist there, though. That's the one thing we didn't see in this movie is fisting.
Well, this was very enlightening. I have to say you are growing. I don't know what direction you're growing in, but you are growing.
Well, you can't see anything below here, so pure speculation. But no, who knows? I have had cycles in my life
Yeah.
as a film critic and also just as a
Sure.
person where it's like I
We're all-
appreciate something and then I don't, and then I appreciate it over again. So maybe
Yeah. We're
in
all
a few
evolving,
years I'll
baby.
come back to it. Yeah.
We're all evolving.
But last point, has anyone ever made, to your knowledge, a biopic of Divine?
I don't think so. That would be something. Because he did so much, she did so much more than just the movies. She was also doing a drag act that was huge, the Coquettes, if you will. And I mean, I was just reading the Wikipedia, but I'm like, wow, this guy, this cat had a life. He really did. She really did.
Well, well, that's the other thing. I mean, I don't know how he identified, but I always knew Divine as a
I think he was
guy
a
who did
he.
drag. Yeah.
He was a
Um,
he, I think.
yeah. And the
He
drag
didn't
was
have to
the
deal with it.
performance,
He
right?
was dead
Mhm.
before it all came up. So
Right. But no, just I mean, reading that or listening to that quote that you read, which I hadn't
yeah,
heard before,
yeah,
that is like something that you would put on a poster or
yeah,
as a teaser trailer, just him like
yeah,
giving that monologue or something.
yeah.
Um,
Right, right. I wonder if it's recorded because that would be the trailer. Divine, that's my name. You know.
You know what it is? Here's Pat. You remember the teaser trailer for Joker with Joaquin Phoenix, and you see his face, and then kind of at the end, it's like flickers and you strobe, and you kind of see the Joker's face. Imagine if the Divine as the Earl character just
right.
giving that monologue, and at the very end, you
Uh,
kind of I am Divine. You flash to that image, and then it cuts to black, and like coming soon. John Waters is is Divine. I don't know if he could
I
say
wish
Divine, but
Waters would do the bio, but he's old now and he's rich, so he he must have made a fortune off the Hairspray musical / movie because Hairspray plays all over the country. I mean, high schoolers do it now. They're talk about the mainstreaming of John Waters. You could go into a high school and see Hairspray. You know?
Yeah, and that gets back to my point. It's just weird enough to be like, "Oh, this is new," but it's not really a flavor of John Waters. It's he's
Right.
watered down.
Oh,
Um,
he's definitely watered down that movie. But if you see the original, it's not as watered. The original Divine one. That's
right. Yeah.
but if you go see
Um,
that Travolta trash, yeah, right.
yeah, I
Why?
mean, but even the original the one from '87 that that gave
Right.
us Ricky Lake,
Yeah.
and lots of other great kind of performances and moments, but it still is not as extreme.
Sure.
It's one of those things. I can imagine someone going in 1987 to see Hairspray, falling in love with it, like, oh my gosh, I have to see this person's other movies, and they're like, oh,
And then they rent
oh,
Pink Flamingos or Female Trouble and have a trauma. Have to go to
yeah.
their therapist, like I mentioned earlier. If I
Well,
had seen it at 14.
I'll say, Pat, I think it'll be time to move to the mountains when high schools start putting on productions of Female Trouble. Um, my goodness. Oh, all right.
Hey, I think a musical version of Female Trouble would be sensational. I got to call Johnny tonight. I got an idea, man. We can put it on Broadway by next year. Could you imagine a kick line with several Aunt Idas? I think that would be fabulous.
I just imagine people like dressed up as those newborns doing like jump rope or something
Oh
with the
man,
umbilical cords.
that was so wild, that scene. So wild.
Oh. All right, Pat, we're going to leave it there.
Yeah,
But Pat McDonald of HollywoodChicago.com, thank you very much, sir. It's always a pleasure. Hey,
always a pleasure.
next time, and I'm not
Yeah.
going to ask you to commit to it,
Okay.
but I want to go back and talk about a film. This is from the fours. It's from 1994,
Very good.
Crumb.
Oh yeah, definitely in. I haven't seen it since then. And when you mentioned it the other day, I was like, wow, I got to get back into the R cum culture. Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay.
There you go, everybody. You'll know what's coming up next. Prepare yourselves.
And that'll be the ultimate litmus test of whether or not I've completely sold out, because Crumb is one of my favorite movies
All right, there you go.
of all time.
We'll see you next
But
time.
I haven't watched it in years. All right, so thank you, Pat. It's been fun. Everybody, check out Pat's stuff. It'll be linked below, along with all the other craziness that we've talked about here on the show, if I can find it. And like and subscribe and all that business. And
Yep.
until next time, whenever that is, whatever that is, thanks and take care.
Blessings.